Hi, my name is Sarah Ruff, and I'm so glad you are joining me for this study of Zechariah. We are studying Zechariah chapter 9 today. So let me begin reading for us. It says, "The word of the Lord is against the land of Hadrach, and Damascus is its resting place. For the eyes of men and all the tribes of Israel are on the Lord, and also against Hamath, which borders it, as well as Tyre and Sidon. Though they are very shrewd, Tyre has built herself a fortress. She has heaped up silver like dust and gold like the dirt of the streets. Listen, the Lord will impoverish her and cast her wealth into the sea. She herself will be consumed by fire. Ashkelon will see it and be afraid, Gaza too, and will writhe with great pain. As will Ekron, for her hope will fail. There will cease to be a king in Gaza, and Ashkelon will become uninhabited, and a mongrel people will live in Ashdod, and I will destroy the pride of the Philistines." Now, let me stir your memory to chapter 8. Remember the concept, the content was that I will bless you, build my temple, and obey my laws and commands. Do these things, and I will bless you. And I will bless you. All the nations will come and seek the Lord in Jerusalem. And 10 men from every nation will grab the robe of a Jewish man, because they will have heard how blessed they will be, because God will bless them if they obey the Lord and his commands. And so chapter 9 is just an ongoing in this line of thought. Not only will he bless, all the nations will grab the robe of a Jewish man, and God will bless the Jewish people so much that all the nations will want to be a part of it. He's also going to destroy their enemies. He also will destroy their enemies. And namely, the one mentioned here is the Philistines. And we know the Philistines have been one of Israel's arch enemies from the time of Abraham all the way through Scripture. And so he's saying these Ashkelon, Gaza, Ezra, Ekron, Ashkelon, these are all 5 of the top Philistine cities that the Lord is telling Zechariah that I am going to destroy. He says, I will remove the blood from their mouths, from the Philistine mouths, and the detestable things from between their teeth. They too will become a remnant for our God. Meaning, I do believe they will become so few. They will no longer, it says, I'll remove the blood from their mouths and the detestable things from between their teeth. Meaning they will no longer be able to devour you as they have in the past. Because they will be unable to devour you, because they will become so few, because God is going to destroy them. They too will become a remnant for our God. They will become like a clan in Judah, very, very few. And Ekron, like the Jebusites. Well, what was the Jebusites like? Remember, David came in and conquered them. That's recorded in 2 Samuel 5:6. You can go read that. I will set up camp in my house against an army, against those who march back and forth, and no oppressor will march against them again. For now I have seen with my own eyes. Meaning, now I am going to bless you if you obey my laws and commands. If you speak truth to one another, render honest judgment in your gates. Don't plot evil against your neighbors in your hearts. Do not love perjury. If you do these things, I will bless you so much that the nations will come and seek you and seek the Lord from Jerusalem. And I'm going to destroy your enemies, even your arch enemies. I'm going to make them so few that they will no longer be able to devour you. Why? Because I'm now watching over you. I am now here, and no one's going to touch you. Verse 9, rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Rejoice, people of Zion. Shout in triumph, daughter of Jerusalem, the people who live in Jerusalem. Why? See, your king is coming to you. He is righteous and victorious, humble and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Notice he is mentioning his first coming. This happened at his first coming in Matthew 21, verse 5. But look in verse 10. He says, I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim. Remember, chariots are mentioned of war. I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the horse from Jerusalem. The bow of war will be removed, and he will proclaim peace to the nations. His dominion will extend from sea to sea, from the Euphrates River to the ends of the earth. As for you, because of the blood of your covenant, I will release your prisoners from the waterless cisterns. That was something they did back then. Remember, Joseph was placed in a waterless cistern. Jeremiah was placed in a waterless cistern. He says, because of the covenant I've made with you, that I said I was going to bless. It goes all the way back to Abraham's covenant in chapter 12. All the way back then, that this is your land. I will bless you. I'll make you a great nation. All these things. He said, because of your covenant, I will release your prisoners from the waterless cistern. Return to a stronghold, you prisoners, because you have hope. Don't leave your stronghold. You have hope. Why? Because today I declare that I will restore double to you. For I will bend Judah as my bow. I will fill that bow with Ephraim. I will rouse your son, Zion, against your sons, Greece. I will make you like a warrior sword. Then the Lord will appear over them, and his arrow will fly like lightning. Now, let me just show you this. Here in chapter 9, he is saying, I'm going to bless you and I'm going to destroy your enemies. Rejoice because your king is coming to you on a donkey, which he did at his first coming. But listen, the Jews didn't obey the words. They didn't believe that Jesus was the Messiah. So therefore, this did not happen. God did not cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the horse from Jerusalem. That is his second coming, when he will do these things. Do you see that? It shows it literally, the first verse 9, is speaking of Christ's first coming, and verse 10 is speaking of his second coming. The prophets back then did not know that there was going to be a time. In fact, not only a little time, but it has been well over 2,000 years from his first coming to his second coming. Do you see that? It reminds me of in Isaiah when it says, a child will be born to you and the government will rest on his shoulders. Literally, Isaiah speaks of Christ's first coming as a baby and his second coming when he will be king, when the government will rest on his shoulders. They did not see this time, this time between that his first coming and his second coming, that there would be a time gap between that. And that is the same thing here. In fact, and here's the thing, there wouldn't have been a time gap between this if they had obeyed, if they had seen Christ as their Messiah. But by God's grace and by his sovereignty, they didn't, so that we Gentiles could be saved. Do you see that? Okay, so it is at Christ's second coming then that he will bring peace, bring judgment to the nations that have come against them, and bring peace on the nations, return them from their strongholds, restore double to them. And then it mentions in verse 13, for I will bend Judah as my bow, and I will fill the bow with Ephraim, meaning Israel, the 10 northern tribes, Israel. Ephraim as my bow. I will rouse your sons Zion against your sons Greece. So he mentions this war that will happen during the time of Greece when they are ruling the world. And you say, well, wait a minute, that's still in the future. It is. Greece, remember, conquers the Medes and the Persians. The Persians, Cyrus, who let them return, but the Jews return back to Judah. Greece will conquer Persia. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail here because when we study Daniel in January, we will go into great discussion of this. But he is mentioning this battle that will take place when Greece is reigning. But what you've got to understand here to understand this scripture is that there is a time that Daniel talks about during the Grecian Empire and a king that will arise that, yes, will happen during the time of Greece, but it is foreshadowing the time at the very end when the Antichrist will be sitting on the throne of God, being worshiped as God, that we talked about in 2 Thessalonians earlier. So again, even though he's talking about Greece, that foreshadows a time of the end. We're talking about Christ's second coming. You will understand this more if you will do my Daniel study. Okay? I'm plugging Daniel for you that we will do in January 2021, Lord willing, if we're all still here. Okay, so he said, verse 14, the Lord will appear over them. Mind you, during this war with Greece, I'm going to bless you in this. I'm going to fight for you. The Lord will appear over them, and his arrow will fly like lightning. The Lord will sound the trumpet and advance with the southern storms. The Lord of hosts will defend them. They will consume and conquer with sling stones. They will drink and be rowdy as if with wine. They will be as full as the sprinkling basins, like those at the corner of the altar. Well, we know those sprinkling basins at the corner of the altar that caught the blood was full of blood. He said that's how full they're going to be. The Lord their God will save them on that day as the flock of his people. For they are like jewels in a crown to him, sparkling over his land. How lovely and beautiful they will be. Grain will make the young men flourish, and the new wine, the young women. Okay, again, in context, we've got to keep it in context with chapters 7 and 8. Listen. The context is the Lord is telling the Jews that are now back in the land, rebuilding Jerusalem, rebuilding his temple. He's saying, don't worry about those fasts. Worry about obeying me, obeying my laws, obeying my commands, because it is then that I will bless you so greatly. I will fight you. When Greece comes, I'm going to fight against your enemies. I'm going to get rid of your enemies and I'm going to fight against them. Just obey me. And we know that this total fulfillment, though, happens in the future because we know that the Jews, and we're going to see a picture of this in chapter 10, 11, and 12 that we're getting ready to study, that the Jews do not obey the words of the Lord. They do not obey. And so therefore God will pour out his judgment on them again. just like he had to do on their ancestors because they would not obey. All right, next week we are going to dive into chapter 10. I can't wait. Join me for it.